Okay, in this video, we're going to be looking at the leg and muscles of the feet. When we look at the leg, we'll look at it from the anterior compartment and the posterior compartment. And the foot is just a little bit in terms of the arch and some of the intrinsic muscles there. So on the anterior leg here, major muscle is a tibialis anterior. It is a dorsiflexor and foot inverter. Lateral to it is the extensor digitorum longus. There's the belly. And then these are the tendons that go to digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. On the posterior side, we can see a little bit of the gastrocs and the soleus. Those are your plantar flexors, like stepping on your tippy toes. Anything that's in front of the leg is dorsiflexion. So it's kind of like a similar concept to what we talked about. If muscles are on the anterior forearm, it flexes the wrist and flexes the fingers. If it's on the posterior forearm, it extends the wrist and extends the fingers. If muscles are in front of the leg but cross the foot, they dorsiflex the foot. If they're on the posterior side, they plantar flex the foot. Okay? So here is a large muscle of the anterior leg, but it crosses over to the inside. So if we look here, large muscle of the leg crosses over to the inside. That's the tibialis anterior. It is a dorsiflexor and inverter of the foot. The main nerve that goes to it is the L4 nerve root and the deep peroneal nerve. When it's damaged, you get a condition called foot drop. This is when you see people walking, taking very high steps where they have to lift their knee and hip up high so the feet and the toes don't drag on the floor. They take these very, very high steps. That's a condition called steppage gait. The type of gait pattern is called steppage gait that's seen with people that have foot drop. Okay, what is the insertion of the highlighted muscle? So tibialis anterior inserts on the first cuneiform and the base of the first metatarsal. So the best answer is metatarsal 1 and medial cuneiform. That's the insertion of it. When we look at the posterior leg, we can see the gastrocnemius. There's a lateral head and a medial head. And then deep to it is the soleus. Both the gastrocnemius and the soleus come down and insert on the calcaneus by way of the Achilles tendon, also known as the calcaneal tendon. On the lateral side of the leg, the lateral compartment, there are two muscles known as the Peroneus longus and Peroneus brevis, also known as the fibularis longus and fibularis brevis. So what is the action of the gastrocnemius? So the gastrocnemius crosses the knee and it crosses the ankle. So at the knee, it can flex the knee, and at the ankle, it plantar flexes. Remember Linder's rule. Dr. Linder's rule is if it crosses the joint, it has to act on the joint. So its main action is of the ankle. But do we see anything of the foot? Flexion of the lower leg. There's an answer. It does flex the leg, but do we see anything of the foot? Let's see, adduction of the leg, rotation of the leg, extension of the, okay, so all of these choices relate to the leg or to the knee. None of them are relating to the foot. If the foot was an answer, it would have to be plantar flexion of the foot. Since it's not, and it crosses the knee on the back, the only answer is flexion of the lower leg. Okay? The leg itself can't abduct and it can't adduct. That knee joint is a hinge. It's not a ball and socket like the shoulder that can abduct and adduct. Just doesn't do that. In terms of extension of the leg, it has to be in the front of the knee to flex the knee. So the gastrocnemius flexes the knee and plantar flexes the foot. Now it's asking for the origin of the medial head. So here's the great toe, here's the medial head, here's the lateral head. So what part of the bone is here? Is it the head of the fibula? No. Shaft of the femur? No. Intercondylar eminence of the tibia? No. Lateral condyle? No. Medial condyle of the femur? Absolutely yes. Okay, now we're looking at the soleus. So the gastrocnemius was cut and what's deep to it is the soleus. Notice the soleus does not cross the knee joint. Only the gastrocnemius did. So the gastrocs and the soleus both attach to the calcaneus by the Achilles tendon. What is the origin? Okay, it doesn't originate on the femur. So anything with femur we can cross out. They like to confuse students between the gastrocnemius and the soleus. The gastrocs crosses the knee joint, the soleus does not. So we can cross out these two choices because there's no way it attaches to the femur. Actually, we can cross these three out because all three of these are femur. Now we have to choose between intercondylar eminence of the tibia, that's here. The only thing it can originate on is the tibia and the fibula. That is the origin. Okay, now what is the highlighted structure here? So we're looking at the lateral side of that leg. The only thing on the lateral side is that fibular bone. So it's the fibularis longus and brevis, also known as the Peroneus longus and Peroneus brevis. It's not the gastroc, it's not the soleus, it's not tibialis anterior, which is in the front, and it's not extensor digitorum, which goes to these toes. It is the muscle on the lateral compartment of the leg, called the fibularis longus and brevis. Those are foot everters. They evert the foot because the belly of the muscle is on the outside of the leg. Okay, now what's deep to that, if we took the gastrocs and the soleus off, now we have some muscles on the posterior deep part of the leg, the flexor hallucis longus, which flexes the great toe, flexor digitorum longus, which flexes toes 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then the tibialis posterior, which does flex the ankle or plantar flex the ankle. It doesn't attach to the toes. Here's the popliteus. This muscle crosses the knee. It's the key that unlocks the knee, the key that unlocks the knee. In order for the knee to flex, it's got to immediately rotate first, and that's what the popliteus does. So back here is the tibialis posterior. Here is the flexor digitorum longus. So let's go back. Here's the tibialis post. Let's go back here so you can take a good look at it again. So the great toe is on the inside. The pinky toe is on the outside here. This is the great toe. These flexors are going to go behind the medial malleolus. Okay. The one that's most lateral is the one that's going to the most medial toe, right? The great toe. The one that's most medial is the one that's going to go to toes 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The one in the middle is the tibialis posterior. So this one here, more in the middle, is tibialis posterior. This one that's more on the inside is going to go to toes 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is flexor digitorum longus. If it was flexor hallucis longus, it would be here on the outside that goes into the great toe. Here is what is the insertion. So this is the Achilles tendon or the calcaneal tendon. So the insertion is the calcaneus. Okay, so what are some of these actions? Let's look at some of the actions. So this muscle is on the outside of the leg, so it everts the foot. This is in front on the dorsal side of the foot, toes 2, 3, and 4. So it extends digits 2, 3, and 4. This is the tibialis anterior, which is a dorsiflexor of the foot and a foot inverter. So since dorsiflexion isn't there, but inversion is, there is dorsiflexion, but it says eversion. Tibialis anterior is not an everter, it's an inverter. The Peroneus or fibularis longus and brevis are foot everters. And then we have this extensor hallucis brevis, which does extension of the great toe. Okay, so you just have to look at where it's going, and then you can figure out the actions. Even if you don't know the name of the muscle, you could still figure it out. If it's on top of the foot, it dorsiflexes. On the bottom, plantar flexes. If it's on top going to the toes, extends the toes. If it's on the bottom, it flexes the toes. If it attaches to the inside of the foot, it inverts. Outside of the foot, everts. So when you bring the soles of the feet in, it's inversion. When you bring the soles of the feet out, eversion. Okay, this is the flexor digitorum longus tendon right here. So this is the quadratus plantae. This muscle goes from the calcaneus, it goes from a bone to a tendon. And the whole idea of this is it kind of redirects the pull so that the toes can flex more in alignment with these rather than flex on a diagonal. Does that make sense? Okay. Here is the flexor digitorum brevis. So here was the longus, and if we dissect that away, we have the brevis, flexor digitorum brevis. And then muscles along the inside, this one right here, is going to support the medial longitudinal arch when you're standing weight bearing to give you that nice arch. When the plantar fascia underneath the foot is weak and it flattens, you get pes planus. When you have a nice arch, it is called pes cavus. If you do have pronated feet or flat feet, that's where customized, soft, flexible orthotics come into play. You never want to wear an orthotic that's a hard shelled orthotic because that only addresses the structure of the foot. The foot moves like a wave. When we study the foot in dynamic movement, it goes heel strike, it goes to the outside of the foot to the pinky toe, and then all the toes flex like a wave. So this is how the foot moves in slow motion. So you want an orthotic that gives you structural support that also allows the foot to move and to bend with it.